everybody. So this is the Hallmarkies podcast, and I'm Rachel, and I'm so excited today to bring you an interview with another Hallmark writer. We love talking to writers, and we are talking to Marcy Holland, and this is going to be so much fun. So thanks so much, Marcy, for coming on and talking with us.
Hey, Rachel. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So what we like to do is we love to start off our podcast just asking you to introduce yourself and to let us know, how did you become a writer? What inspired you to get into writing?
Well, my name is Marcy Holland. I've been writing professionally for about 6 years now, and with Hallmark for about 1.5. How I got into writing, growing up, I always had like a fairly, I guess, obsessive relationship with film and television. Like I had my own subscription to TV Guide at age 8. And it always seemed a little bit like a magic trick that I really wanted to know everything about. So it was always like a really important part of my life. I felt like I made a lot of friends through like mutual loves of shows or movies. It just became like a really great shorthand, I think, in like forming connections with people. And I didn't think it was something particularly realistic in terms of like a career path. So I got my undergrad degree in English, and then I graduated and I taught 5th grade math and English for a year. But I would get home from work and I would write every day, just sort of for fun. And I got to this point where I was like, I'm going to apply to one film school. And if I get in, I'm going to take it as a sign that like maybe I should give this a shot, like a legitimate shot. And I did. I applied to Boston University. I got into their film program. And now I'm here on your podcast. So that's sort of the summary.
It all culminates. This exciting moment. That's really cool. Yeah. My sister is a writer. She writes some picture books. And that kind of is similar to what she would do as a kid. She had all these little notebooks, and she was, every day basically kind of writing little poems and little stories and thinking of ideas. And so I can kind of relate to it in that way. I think that's really cool. So what is your process for coming up with ideas and coming up with characters? Like, is it just depend on the project, or do you have kind of a style that helps you?
I think it is probably kind of project dependent. I come onto these projects, so I'm mostly working made for TV. So I started on thrillers, and then obviously I've segued into romantic comedy, which is actually has more parallels than you would think. And but I come onto these projects in all different stages. So there are projects where I'm on the ground level and I'm working in development with the production company. And so like I'm actively involved in like helping create the pitch and the premise and taking it to the network. But a lot of these projects I come on as sort of like a gun for hire, where there's already a pitch. So they have the premise, they have, sometimes they'll have a whole outline. Sometimes there'll be a whole script, so they just need somebody to come on and like either do a punch up on or completely rework and rewrite depending on, what stage it's at. So sometimes like some of the characters are already there for you. And it's like, okay, if this person is like, they've already sort of sown the seeds of, what their character arc is going to be. And then you say, okay, like, well, what kind of characteristics can you give this person in the beginning to really help emphasize that arc and like really show growth? There are things that I think carry across. Like, I think most writers have things that just they're naturally drawn to. Like, I really like writing banter. I really like writing fun friendships. I really like, in not so much in the Hallmark, although sometimes like it slips in there. I tend to have more of like a dry, sarcastic humor, and so there's a little bit of like an edge to some of the stuff that I write. But yeah, I mean, like in terms of process, it really is just sort of. And I should also mention that like these also are highly, highly collaborative. So, you know, sometimes the best stuff comes out of conference calls with producers and directors, and sometimes the actors, and you're bouncing stuff off each other, and it's almost as like a writer's room kind of situation. So there really is sort of all different things, but I think I do have tendencies, like if you, you know, watch a lot of the stuff that I do, like you could probably pick out some things that feel like they're like a running theme, or like a running like oh, they're like, she clearly likes to write that type of character. But yeah, it really is kind of like project dependent for sure. Some are much more puzzling than others. Like there are premises I hear that I immediately know what the movie looks like and the kind of character I want to put in it. And then there are other premises that are much more sort of much trickier, that you really have to work at. Like how does this all fit together? Like what does this look like? How do you create a whole story out of this? How do you keep this interesting? So,
so you're more taking ideas. You're more a writer for hire kind of thing on a lot of projects, as opposed to you know, writing kind of spec scripts kind of type thing, and then pitching them, or do you do both?
Both, but much more writer for hire. So like and even when, so at this point I don't write specs anymore. I went out, when I started my career, I went out with specs. I had specs. They sort of got me in the room, but a much more efficient way to sort of navigate this, especially this made for TV arena, is you can develop like a pitch, and it really only has to be like a page or two. And I have a lot of pre-established relationships with like producers and people at the network, that you could just take them the pitch and say like, is this something that you're interested in? And then they'll like send you the steps, right? So they might be like, oh, this is kind of an interesting idea, like get us an outline on it, like we'll see if this is something we like. So as opposed to like, you know, spending a couple weeks writing a script that you know, people might say like, no, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it must be, because you have so much content. It's really amazing. You had 9 projects this year alone, I think, according to that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, these past 2 years have been great but exhausting. I mean, like, really is sort of like, it feels a little bit like a roller coaster that I just climbed on and have like tried to hold on to. It's like, you know, Hallmark, especially because the past year and a half I've been really mostly working with them. You have like a good infrastructure to like support, you know, like they're so actively involved that it's not like you're sort of like, all right, good luck, you know, and, you know, try to do it. It's really collaborative, and, you know, they're always there to, you know, help you if you run into any roadblocks and everything like that. And I don't know, it's just been kind of like a fun, a lot of it is, you know, maybe stubbornness on my part, where I'm like, hey, like, I'm down for the challenge. Like, let me try, like, let me just, you know, if someone brings me a project and it sort of sparks something, I'm just like, let's run with it. Like, so.
That's really, really
I
cool.
think I am going to slow down eventually. It's like a pace that like is a little hard to sustain, but it's been, I don't know, it's been fun so far.
Yeah. So I'm curious about what you said about there being more in common with the thrillers versus the rom-coms, because you have done, we call them the cautionary tales on Lifetime or other networks. And yeah, I'm curious about that. So what do you think that there are in common with sort of because I joke that you could take almost any Hallmark movie and or romantic comedy in general and put a different score on, and it could be a horror movie.
And that's absolutely true. I
Yeah.
100% believe that.
Yeah.
A lot of times the premises can be very close, but they just go in different directions. Like, I'm working on a project now. Can't talk too much about it. It's a thriller, but I will say that if you pitched me this same premise, I could write a romantic comedy with it.
Yeah.
Like, it leans heavy. I mean, so one of the things that I really like about romantic comedies and what Hallmark has embraced, that I feel like there's a bit of a theatrical vacuum, is trope heavy storytelling. So like, I love tropes. I love accidentally engaged. I love fake boyfriend. I love stuck in an elevator.
Yes.
Like, give me any of those all day long. Hallmark leans into those. And thrillers tend to be trope heavy too. So that's definitely one similarity.
Uh-huh.
And then two, like, so even though I do hop genres quite a bit, I also, you probably noticed on my IMDb, I also have a couple of shark movies.
Oh
Across
yeah.
the board, like, yeah, I tend to bring like similar elements in. Like, so there are a couple of my thrillers that like have a legitimate like love story in them that is,
Mm-hmm.
that could be in like a dark comedy or a romantic comedy. My shark movies always have a love story in them and tend to be like much kinder than some of the other entries in the genre, just because, those are the kind of things that I like to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of how, maybe like there's like an undercurrent, I think, of just,
Yeah.
I prefer to tell stories about kind people or like, like people you want to root for.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, so I think if they were too dissimilar, I would probably have a lot harder time maneuvering between them.
Uh-huh.
Um, and maybe that's sort of like been the most helpful thing, is that I can sort of, jump from one to the other because I can find sort of like this commonality that helps me sort of establish a shorthand to get them done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting because I think about a lot with the on How I Met Your Mother. They had a little thing that they talked about where it was Dobler versus Dahmer. That so like
Oh,
if somebody and Dobler and Say Anything, he does this grand gesture
right.
and it's really romantic because the people liked like each other, so it's romantic. But if somebody did the same thing and you didn't like them, all of a sudden it's super creepy and weird. And so that's why there's this very close line between I think of the old movie Bed of Roses. I don't know if you ever saw that with Christian Slater. Like that character is super creepy when you really think about it. Like he's super stalking, he's super weird, but because he's the hero, we think it's really romantic and we like it.
I mean, there are so many. Think about one I think about a lot is Revenge of the Nerds, which I think is
Yeah.
like has some of like the most horrific plot points that you could,
Yeah.
dream up, but it's contextualized in this sort of, a hero story where like you're rooting for these people. Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's sort of the thing too, is I'm always, you know, there are elements, I think, especially in like a leading man, that you definitely want to celebrate. And I think that there are ones that maybe come from another time that you maybe want to de-emphasize or like,
Yeah.
get away from. And so I think that's definitely an example of one of like the persistent doesn't take no for an answer. Like that's not a romantic gesture. Like that's a harassment. So
Yeah.
yeah,
it's it's
for
it's
sure.
it's interesting. I joke I on Twitter, I when I'm live tweeting, I'll have a Hallmark or horror shot, a screenshot. I do. I've adapted books in some of the projects before, uh, particularly Christmas Everlasting just came out. You were a co-writer on that, and I was just wondering, what is that experience like in comparison to it being your own idea?
Um, well, so Christmas Everlasting was um, a little bit different in that. So I came on to do rewrites on that. So it was almost
Mm-hmm.
like, so a lot of decisions were made before I even got there, right? Like, so when you're so I've adapted. It's funny because like the two books that I've adapted. So I also adapted one. There's a thriller that I have a writing credit on called Bad Stepmother, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
That was from a book, and that I started on. I was the first writer on, and so like a lot of that experience is like, you know, taking the book and finding the cinematic elements, and you know, cutting anything extraneous that doesn't feel like it's serving the story that you're trying to tell. But what you find out very quickly is that sometimes, especially when there's like a network involved or a production company, they have sort of different, their priority might not always be, and I don't think it should be, like a particularly faithful adaptation. Like they're interested in a movie that, you know, looks like a movie that they would put on their network, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes you'll run into a book that has that sort of like disconnect already, where you're like, you know, it's a great premise, but the execution doesn't really match the network. So with Bad Stepmother, that was kind of the case where a lot of elements of the book, they were just like, that's not really our style. So you're changing quite a bit right from the get-go. But so with Christmas Everlasting, a lot of those changes kind of that I mentioned that happened at the very beginning had already occurred by the time I got on the script. So like she had a new career. She had, there are sort of different, some different setups in terms of how she meets people and how she interacts, and the circumstances behind if for anyone listening who read it, like how her sister had her accident. So those were fundamental changes were already sort of in place, but that's when you're adapting a book. That's sort of like the first thing you try to do is you try to pare it down and put it in a framework that you feel like will be cinematic. And when you're writing made-for-TV movies, you also write them in a very specific way where you break them into 9 acts, and you have so it's like a television script where when you're reading it, like you'll see the act breaks, because you're essentially,
Mm-hmm.
you want every act break to have like a twist or a reveal or a question to bring the audience back. So one thing I do too is when I'm reading a book is I look for the big swings in the book, because I know that I'll be able to sort of place them in those act breaks and sort of utilize them that way.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was kind of like a rambling answer, but
No, it's great.
yeah, there's a couple of different things that you do. I mean, like I try to be as faithful as possible when I'm breaking down like that first attempt, like when I'm bringing it to outline, especially if it's a book that I know like people have a particular fondness for. Uh, Really, my goal is to just make it more cinematic and visual.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's sort of like my
Yeah.
thinking going in. But sometimes, I mean, once you start getting notes and everything, then it's like you're really just trying to you know, address everyone's concerns and get it into a place that's, you know, shootable
Uh-huh.
and feels like the movie that people want to tell. So.
That's really, really interesting because I I was a little bit not disappointed, but I think that it was a bit of a downgrade for me to turn her from a political consultant into a just bland real estate lawyer, because I don't know, just there was more passion in her, you know, really believing in this candidate, and really, you know, that wasn't like she was just sort of taking a bland corporate job. This was something she actually had passion for. She could see why she would, you know, would leave her hometown and would, but I understand they probably just didn't want to touch politics, so I get it. But
You know, I actually don't. So I don't know what went into that decision, because I came
Yeah.
on and she was already there. But I will say, like, I feel like everyone's first instinct might be like, oh, like politics is a third rail, like they probably don't want to touch it. But my instinct, if I had to like really guess, is that so when I was working on Cooking with Love, one of like the largest concerns about that script always that I was always getting notes on is that they were worried that her job was like too esoteric and too inside baseball. Like they were worried that, unlike a florist or a lawyer or a baker or, a small business owner or something that most of America has like a shorthand with, right? They understand what that job is
Yeah.
and everything. I feel like there is a little concern, especially with a movie like Christmas Everlasting, where we're not with her on her job, right? Like she's back home. Like I do wonder if maybe that was part of the thinking of like,
Oh, interesting.
also too, like what struck me about the book, and again, the book paid much more service to like her job and everything, and like, but
Mm-hmm.
that stuff was going to have to go away, I assume anyway, just because, you have much less real estate to tell the story,
Yeah.
is like giving her like a really interesting job. Like the president might give her a position and then literally spending no time on it while she's back home also might get a little frustrating, I wonder. So like
Oh,
there
yeah.
could have other things, I don't know, but I totally understand what you're saying. Like I feel like, Hallmark's making so many movies that like they really are kind of branching out into like these different jobs, seeing different worlds. I mean, they're filming in all different places now too.
Yeah,
Like they
that's
just had
true.
in what was it, South Africa, the Lacey Chabert one. Where did they
Yeah.
film that?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
in
So like,
South Asper, yeah.
yeah, I feel like I feel like they are sort of taking more of those chances and seeing that. But that's my first instinct. But again,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
She was already a lawyer when I came on.
Well, the other thing too that I was like, you have Dennis Haysbert, who's like one of the most iconic actors to play a president in TV history, and you have a chance for him to play the president. I'm like, oh no, what are they doing? But
I mean, that is also true. I will also say that when I was working on it, they also didn't have a cast at all.
yeah,
So,
I'm sure.
but that is funny, like that they eventually cast him, and yeah, that there could have been a president. That would have
Yeah,
been a great choice. That's
yeah,
really, really
right.
true. Yeah, I can imagine someone read the book, they'd be like, wait a second, like
Yeah,
what a missed
no,
opportunity. Yeah, no, that's
that's
a good call.
funny. So uh you have a couple that are still that haven't been released. Yeah, they're still coming up. One that the Time for Me to Come Home for Christmas, also based on a book. And so what can you tell us a little bit about what that's going to be and what that story is a little bit?
Sure. Well, so I will say that on that script, really, I just came in for dialogue punch ups.
Oh,
So
okay.
I did like a dialogue pass. I reconfigured their meet cute. So, um, uh, but the story is a very cute one
Yeah.
where it's very like planes, trains, and automobiles kind of situation where it's these two people, and he is a famous musician, and she works at like her family business, and it's Christmas time, and they meet in an airport, and then they're sort of thrown together trying to both get home for Christmas.
Mm.
And I love those types of stories. It's really fun to be asked to come on and work on it. I think it's going to be very sweet, and people are going to like it. That's movies and mysteries.
Yeah.
So it does have an emphasis on sort of family. I think that there's supposed to be, don't quote me on this, but I think there's supposed to be like new music in it.
Okay.
Or like there's definitely like a
Yeah.
musical element in that. So people can expect music.
Because it's based
Uh,
on the song written by Blake Shelton,
right.
that his mom wrote the book, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And from what I understand, they were very involved in the development and production side of the movie.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't interact with any of them. Again,
Okay.
I sort of jumped on and did some punch
That
ups
makes
and stuff,
sense.
and then but I am excited for it. It looked like I think it's going to be a very sweet, sort of feel good movie. Yeah.
So you also have Entertaining Christmas coming up, and was this you're the sole writer on this one, and so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this this is with the team that did Very Very Valentine, that production company, and I also did the Christmas Care with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they came to me with this premise, and what really intrigued me about it is, so basically the idea is like, what if your mom was like Martha Stewart or Oprah or the Pioneer Woman or Paula Deen or any one of these people whose name is like associated with perfection, right? Like
Uh-huh.
that they make the most beautiful things during the holidays and people sort of aspire to be like them. Like what would that be like if you were always trying to like figure out where you fit in that, and sort of being in their shadow, which I thought was kind of an interesting story to tell. So it's basically Jodie Sweetin who is in it. She That's her mom. Her mom is this sort of maven, I guess you would call her.
Yeah.
Like she has books, cookbooks. She has, she goes on talk shows.
It's
She,
like a diva.
everyone buys her Christmas bulbs. It's like she's a big deal.
Yeah.
And she is, she's asked by a fan, a little girl, to help throw a Christmas party to welcome her father home. He's overseas and he's coming home for Christmas, and she wants to give him the most perfect Christmas possible. And she thinks that the person who can help her is this woman. And but she is tied up with a charity, and so she wants her daughter, who works for her company and is going to be sort of the heir apparent to this big lifestyle brand, to go in her place. The only problem is that like she's not her mom, like at all. She has a whole different set of skills, and she's worried that she is pretending to be something she's not, essentially. So she's trying to find her own voice, and she's trying to sort of navigate this tricky situation where she's back and people think she's just like her mother, right? Somebody who could, crochet a blanket like on the spot, or like, make the world's most beautiful gingerbread house like blindfolded, right? So it's a lot of there's a lot of like comedy in it, and then there's obviously a love story. And her love interest happens to be a reporter, the local reporter, who is there, who's trying to cover it, and while she's basically trying not to make a mess of the
A disaster.
situation.
Yeah. That sounds
Yeah, so
fun.
it was really fun. I was really excited when they brought it to me. It seemed like a lot of fun, and actually it's directed by Robin Dunn, who has been in the actor who's been in some
Mm-hmm.
Hallmark movies,
Mm-hmm.
and he was super great to work with. Had a lot of great insight during the sort of the notes process and everything. So I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be fun. When they told me Jodie Sweetin was in it, I was really excited. I thought she was like a great choice. Yeah, so I hope people like it. It's definitely a much lighter. Like I feel like I've been on all like the bummer like projects. Like people are like all the like really sad ones. This one there's really no sad, low points. I mean, there's talk of family and there's all that kind of stuff like that, but it's a much lighter fare than the other two, or the other three, really.
Yeah.
I guess.
I'm excited. I really liked Jodie last year in Finding Santa. I thought she was a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. And so you also did Reunited at Christmas this
Yeah.
year, and that one was really different. I really enjoyed it, but it just felt like they were, I don't know, it was just very very different. The fact that they already had a relationship, and she was really sort of nervous and uncomfortable about getting engaged, and just the whole plot structure and everything was very different from what we typically get with Hallmark. And so I know you're a co-writer on that one, I believe, and I was just curious about that and how that project ended up happening, becoming so different.
So no, it is very different. That was kind of a wild project. So that was Nikki DeLoach's like baby. Like, she brought that pitch to Hallmark, and they were really excited about it. And I was excited when I got the call to come on, because I read it and I was like, this is very sweet. And they told me, they said they thought of me because it was very family oriented, and that was kind of like what the Christmas Cure was. It was the family plot was kind of like almost like a dual A plot, right, with the romance. It was a lot of family stuff. And so the thing is, though, is that her pitch was the premise. It was a family who had been doing the holiday shuffle because their parents, were divorced, and they've kind of crisscrossed for all these years, and the grandmother dies and invites them all back home, and they have this list of things to do, and by doing the list, they sort of remember what was special about Christmas, and it was just really, really sweet. But what the pitch didn't have was a love interest. And so the very first phone call I had on that project was all of us trying to figure out, okay, what's the love story we're going to tell? And actually, the first thing we landed on, which I think I took to outline, was that her love interest was going to be her brother-in-law's brother, who was like a tag along to Christmas.
Oh, okay.
And what we quickly sort of learned, so typically, not just in Hallmark movies, but I'll use Hallmark movies as an example because I think they do this well, is the love interest is a large part of the main conflict of the movie, right? So like if it's a girl and her family's farm is in danger, the love interest is usually like the lawyer like trying to seize the land or something. Or if she's like a baker who's like trying to make the world's best, or like win like the Christmas gingerbread competition, like her love interest is like the rival, gingerbread maker or something.
Yeah.
And like having a love interest who's just like happens to be there like was not particularly compelling. He just felt like so shoehorned in every time we tried. But we couldn't think of, like, the conflict was so family based that there was no sort of natural place for the love interest to come in. Like, he wasn't going to be like the lawyer to the grandmother's estate. Again, that like doesn't put him, like, what is their obstacle? It was really, really hard. It was a lot of conversations with the network and with Nikki. We had a lot of them. And I feel like, I don't even really remember who suggested it or how it came out, but I think someone tossed out maybe even maybe non-seriously about like the most awkward conflict of going home for Christmas is like bringing your boyfriend or like for the first time or something.
Yeah.
And then we all kind of like paused and were like could they be like already together? Because also if like her whole thing was like her family was divorced and like what was her arc going to be? And it seemed like like what would be connected to that the most would be like a fear of commitment or some kind of nervousness about that. And I think that was again a story that Nikki really started to immediately spark to and was like, yes, like this is sort of like I think would be really great to tell. And so then that's how we sort of landed on that. But it was really hard. It was like probably one of the hardest things that I worked on because again, it didn't have an obvious structure. It didn't have obvious stakes. It like didn't have sort of like a lot of obvious things, but it had, I think what everyone appreciated about it was that it had sort of like an honesty, and it had like a sweetness and just a real affection for what Christmas tends to feel like for people, right? When they all get back together with their family, and it's a lot about sort of like nostalgia and remembering, like, it's like one of those things
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, it's Christmas, I got to get back together with everyone, and then you're there and you're like, why don't we hang out more? Like, why are we like always here making gingerbread cookies? Because I think that's something that people can
Yeah.
relate to. So
Yeah, I
um,
think so too. Yeah, it was something with that film and Last Vermont Christmas that for me, both of those movies, I appreciated that they showed the dysfunction of family while still sort of functioning and loving each other. Because a lot of times in holiday films or in other films, the comedy is very very over the top, as far as the dysfunction. It's like something like The Family Stone, for instance. And that movie is fine, whatever, but like the dysfunction is very over the top. And I kind of like the fact that in both those movies, they love each other, and they have, it's hard. Like being in a family is hard, and it takes a lot of work. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that. They're just you're just very different. And at least in my family, we all love each other, but we're all very different. And I don't think that any of us would probably choose just out of a pool of people, oh, that's the person, I'm going to be friends with that person, I have so much in common. But obviously we are friends and we love each other because we're related to each other and we have history and whatever. And so I think that I appreciate those kinds of stories because that's something I can relate to more than the the I don't know. I mean, I love a good escapist romance as well, but as far as relating to it, I can't really relate to that kind of experience. And so I was really glad to see that this year. That I think Hallmark took some chances with their Christmas programming. You've got so many movies that why not take a chance on some of them? And I was glad to see that they did. And I think uh, Reunited Christmas was definitely one that they took some chances. So I appreciate that.
I mean, yeah, it felt like people um, were sort of open to being like, okay, yeah, like that was like a bit of a different vibe, but like, yeah, there's a lot of movies. That's kind of also the nice thing about Hallmark too. It's like they they sort of see this platform and they go, okay, like we're gonna give you the same kind of like nice, warm and cozy feeling, but like like we have a lot of room to like tell a lot of stories. So like let's give it a whirl.
Yeah.
um, so yeah.
So speaking of the escapist romances, so Very Very Valentine, it's still one of the best of the year for sure. For we did back in, I don't know, July or August, we did a top 5, and we had 2 of our friends, and so between the 4 of us, we all had Very Very Valentine in our top 5 from for
Heck yeah.
yeah.
Excited.
Yeah. And when we do our top 10s of the whole year, because that was just half year, I'm sure it will definitely appear. This was so great. I loved it. It was so sweet and so romantic. And I loved both Damon Runyon and Cameron Matheson as these 2 different kind of men that I thought they were great. And that's such a romantic comedy staple of the best friend, the one that you've shared everything with, kind of taken for granted, and then it's like boom, you're actually in love with them. But then you realize it too late and he's already leaving, and it's so great. I love it.
Well, as I mentioned before, I love tropes, and
Yeah.
that movie was every trope. Like it was like my
Yeah.
trope-a-palooza, which I was really excited about. That movie, actually, there's some fun backstory about that movie where, um, as I mentioned, that was the production company that also did the Christmas Cure, and they contacted me. Um, I want to say I don't remember when it was. Obviously after the Christmas Cure,
Uh-huh.
and they said, we want to pitch another Christmas movie, and they sent me this email with a couple of like log lines, and at the very end, and like I was like, oh, okay, like none of them really, I felt like they resonated. But at the very end of the email, they said, oh, and also we have access to this botanical gardens, and so we'd like to do a movie with like a dance there. And I think I immediately wrote them back and I said, I want to do a reverse Cinderella. I want to do a girl meets a mystery man and he gets swept away and she has to find him. And I think that's what we took to Hallmark, and that was sort of what they sparked to. Although, so in my first pitch, I imagined it more of like taking place over like that night and then just one day. Because I also really like movies that sort of take place in a single day, where it was
Yeah.
just them, her and Henry running around the city, like false, false start to false start, false lead to false lead, um, uh, and eventually giving up. And I think the network was like, no, like we definitely want her to meet him, like find him and like pursue a relationship with him. I think because they were interested in sort of like a Cyrano angle. But so that movie was supposed to be a Christmas movie. It was pitched as a Christmas movie. It's called The Christmas Gala, and I think I wrote the first outline as a Christmas movie, and then they said, actually, we want it to be a New Year's movie. And I was like really excited about that because I had this idea for, and I think you'll probably immediately have the same idea, which was, the countdown to midnight is like a perfect, like a Cinderella moment. But so originally, I think in the first pitch, she was a teacher or like a school librarian or something, and they said they wanted her to be a florist. And the more we got into this whole florist thing, the more they were like, this is a Valentine's movie. There's like so many flowers in this movie. Like, this is just a Valentine's movie. But for eagle eye Hallmark fans, might have noticed that last year on the schedule was a movie called New Year's Gala that magically disappeared off of the schedule. And that was Very, Very Valentine. And I remember having like heart palpitations because they had announced it on their schedule and I hadn't even like gotten out of outline stage yet. Like, wait a second. I was like, whoa. It was very scary, but they changed it to a Valentine's movie. I think it does work really nicely as a Valentine's movie. So, even though I had to lose like my countdown scene, there were a lot of things I got to do because it was Valentine's that was really fun. So
Well, I loved the scene. The whole scene at the party was amazing. So good. And I also loved the ending. Speaking of tropes, the whole catch you at the airport at the last minute was done so well. I loved that. And I don't know, just Henry was just such a sweet, great character. Cameron Matheson did such a great job. And
he is amazing.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Another interesting fact, the first draft, this is, I guess it's not really this interesting, but the first draft, there was no proposal. And then the network was like, I think I even remember how they phrased it. They're like, I want an engagement. Is that crazy? I was like, no, I think we've earned it. Like, obviously, like some of these movies where like the people just met and you're like, you've known each other a week. Like, this doesn't make sense. Why would they be like proposing or something? But this was like, they were grown up. They had like spent all this time together. They were best friends. They clearly had a romantic connection. I was like, let's just go full romance. Like, really just drive it home. So, and obviously, like they were in a botanical gardens. Like, could you imagine getting proposed to in like a beautiful botanical gardens and like,
it was
he's in the
perfect.
suit. And I don't know. It was really, there was the right call.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know they've been moving away from having them say they I love you, kind of if it's one of those just met kind of situations, but in this case, it was definitely perfect. I loved it. We were all like, "Oh!"
That's the reaction we were going for.
Yes,
so
success. And I really thought that Damon Runyon was fun as this other, this mysterious kind of other guy. I liked him too. And and I mean, and Danica, she's so great at I think playing the sincere and sweet. She gets those sort of emotional moments. I think that's her biggest strength is, when she's just sort of tearing up, and you're just like, oh no. she's really really
Well,
good at.
the thing about her too is like the second she's on the screen, like you're in her corner.
Yeah,
You're just like,
I
oh,
agree.
like
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like I am 100% with you. And again, like her character, because she is, she has like an advanced math degree or something, right? Like she's like an incredibly accomplished mathematician. Like I think she was excited about the fact that like her character, was a botanist and like, crossbred these flowers, and like there was like a little bit of a sciencey element to her character.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I think that definitely appealed to her. We got her attached really early. Usually there's a script and then it goes out and then they find someone, but they were able to, I think that they had thought of her very early on, and it was very exciting. She was like one of the very few that I knew who was in the movie while I was writing it. And so I did try to like you said, she is so good at those really sincere moments, and like those I tried to lean into those a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. It was just a classic romantic comedy. I think if you like, not even just for Hallmark fans, I think anybody who likes romantic comedies will like Very Very Valentine. It's so fun. So
Put that on the poster.
yeah. So we like to end our interviews with some silly questions, and we have a holiday edition that you get to be a part of. And then,
All right.
all right, let's do this. So it's fun. So, what is your favorite holiday drink?
Eggnog, but I can't drink it straight. I have to drink it like halved with milk.
Yeah,
It's just too strong.
yeah.
But I do like eggnog and with cinnamon on top for sure.
Yeah. That's how I do too. I dilute it a little bit. It is pretty
Yeah, I don't.
strong.
Oh, it's just too much.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
All right. What is your favorite holiday cookie or treat?
Whoopie pies.
Mm.
Is that technically holiday? My aunt makes them for the holidays, so I associate them with the holidays.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't know if the world does, but for me, it's a whoopie pie.
Yeah. Yum. Just the traditional chocolate variety?
I guess if it's Christmas, like maybe throw
Maybe.
some like peppermint in there. I don't know.
Oh,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
really, like red velvet. I
Yeah.
don't know, but the
Yeah.
whoopie pie is like one of the most perfect desserts.
Yeah.
So,
It's delicious. All right. What is your favorite Christmas carol or song?
oh, I mean, does everyone just say Mariah? Um,
We do get a lot of that,
yeah.
which is a great
Okay.
answer. You
So
can't
like
go
with
wrong.
that, no, with that, well, like I will acknowledge that um, in its rightful place is number one. But to go out of the box a little bit, I think my favorite that I have to kind of crank up when it's on is Marshmallow World.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly the Darlene Love version.
Uh-huh.
Um, although Gravel Pit has a great cover of it too, but that is a really fun song that is
Yeah.
not to be
Yeah.
underestimated. I think that's a great song.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, yeah. I like the Kristen Chenoweth has a fun. I love her. She has a really good holiday album, but she has a version of that song on her album. So
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine hers would be
yeah,
amazing.
it's so
I'm gonna
good.
put that on my iPad. I will.
Yes, really good. All right. What is your favorite Christmas movie? Doesn't have to be Hallmark. Any movie.
Okay. Made for TV, A Diva Christmas Carol.
So
Hands
good.
down,
We love it.
100%. I love that movie so much. Um, uh, and then along that theme, I think theatrical, my favorite Christmas movie would have to be Scrooged.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe
Bill
While You Were
Murray.
Sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah, those are good. Really good. Yeah. Yeah, I love Why You Were Sleeping so much. it's
It's
bonkers, but I
one
love
of
it.
it's one of the most perfect romantic comedies.
Yeah.
I think my top four are probably um, While You Were Sleeping, The Cutting Edge,
Oh,
uh, Romancing the Stone, and Ghost.
oh,
I think the four most perfect romance movies.
those are those are some undeniably some of the best. I love uh so many scenes in While You're Sleeping. I love the dinner scene. It's just one of the best. It's perfect the way that they're just bouncing off each other like that. Like who can't relate to that? That has a loud, obnoxious family. It's so
Exactly. Yeah.
good. I like be yeah. Uh, and I just love the scene when he's talking to his dad, and his dad's like, you have those moments where everybody is happy and everybody is, whatever. And he's just like, Dad, this is not one of those moments.
Yeah.
So
I
good.
feel like it's really highly quotable.
Yeah, it is for
So
sure. Yeah. If you fit into my jeans, I'll kill myself. Anyway, so very good. Okay. What is your favorite holiday tradition? Like putting up the tree or just something you're
um so a couple of days before Christmas, every Christmas my friends and I get together and we do a Yankee swap. And the emphasis is sort of randomness. Like the idea is to give like a comically random gift. So like 2 years ago, for example, my gift was a scented candle and an autographed picture of Lisa Kudrow, just for like
Yeah.
no reason at all. Like I got off eBay. It's just to like try, try to like out random each other.
Uh-huh.
So you walk away with like a really bizarre gift, and like it's just a chance to make everyone laugh.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of my favorites.
Oh, that
That's not
sounds
like
fun.
family oriented or whatnot.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
love a Christmas show.
Well, because we've been wondering, there's been two different cases of white elephant gifts, parties, whatever, so far in Countdown to Christmas, and I feel like they don't understand at Hallmark what white elephant gift is. I'm like,
Well, none of those have been mine. So
yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I'm like, you're doing a Yankee swap at best. You're not doing a white
yeah,
elephant gift here because they're supposed to be
no, it's
funny.
exactly like I mean, and people take them, very seriously
Yeah.
as
Oh
they
yeah.
should, because it's a fun tradition. It's like, and if you don't do it right, I feel like it diminishes the fun, right? Like
Yeah.
you got to do it right to make, because otherwise it's just like then just do a Secret Santa and get somebody like a set of
Yeah.
towels or something. But
Yeah.
no, you got to do it right because that's like the fun of it. Because it
Yeah.
really is. It does embrace that kind of Christmas spirit that like it's not what you get. It's like giving and being with people, and like that's what it's about, not like,
Yeah.
nobody walks away from one of those with something that is like their most cherished,
Right.
possession.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know?
I usually struggle what to get. If it's a white elephant, it's easier if it's a Yankee swap because then you can get something nice and hope that it'll be swapped a lot. But with white elephant, I usually end up getting those those disgusting jelly beans from Harry Potter. I get
Oh,
those.
ugh,
That's
no.
kind of funny, I guess. That's
Yeah.
that's about as creative as I am getting. But
I guess you can like put them in like a jar
yeah,
and not tell someone that they're the bamboozled or whatever, what
yeah,
they call bean boozled.
something like
Um,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
disgusting.
No, owl. Oh,
But anyway, so next question. So, do you prefer Scrooge or the Grinch?
Scrooge.
All right. Clear
Scrooge.
lights or colored?
Um, wow. I mean, honestly, clear. Like
Yeah,
I just feel like they like maybe just because they like are more atmospheric,
yeah,
but then again, like if it's like somebody's family tree and like their kids are little, like put color lights up,
yeah.
let the kids have fun.
Hmm.
But I don't know, aesthetically, I'm gonna go with the clear
Yeah.
lights.
Would you consider yourself a good gift wrapper?
No, no, nope, nope, nope. And I've even like resorted to try to use like YouTube tutorials and stuff to like, and it's just, I don't know what it is. I cannot do it. I've accepted, I've accepted that. I try to buy a lot of gift bags
Yeah,
and
me
the
too.
boxes with the ribbon you just tie across it. Um, but that's no,
Yeah.
I'm not a good, not. And I'm really envious of the people who can. That's the other thing. I'm like really, like I find like it boggles my mind when someone gives me like a beautifully wrapped gift. I'm just like, what is this sorcery? How did you do this? Like, why does your paper do things that my paper like cannot do? But so I have a lot of respect for people. If someone gives me a beautifully wrapped gift, I don't even care what's inside. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just truly honored.
You're like, wow, I don't want to open it. It's so pretty.
Exactly.
That's funny. Yeah, if I really focus, I can do a good job. But I typically just I have a big bag of bows, and so I'll wrap it and then just stick a bow on it. It'd be good. But yeah, the gift bags are a good way to go. It's just easier
Yeah.
all around. And then they
Exactly. And
use
people are
them.
just gonna tear into it anyway. They're just gonna like
Yeah.
throw it all around.
Yeah. So, all right, last question. Do you have an ugly sweater? What is your ugliest Christmas sweater?
Okay, so I don't have the sweater, but I have a couple of those t-shirts that are like printed to look like the ugly
Yeah.
Christmas sweater. One of them is the Golden Girls and has like pictures of their faces and then cheesecake and like palm trees. And one of them is Die Hard and it has machine guns and oh ho ho
That's
and the
funny.
scenes. And so I usually will rotate those to Christmas events, and they're always, you know, the first thing people see is like why does your Christmas shirt have a machine gun on it? And it's like, well, because it's a Die Hard, which is a Christmas movie, and
Yes.
but yeah, I love those things. They're super fun, and like there are websites that just have like anything you even remotely like, they'll probably have a Christmas sweater version of it.
Yeah.
So I think they're a lot of fun in general, but I want to get like a legit sweater. So I'm always on the lookout for something
Uh-huh.
truly garish. I think those, yeah.
Yeah.
They had the on the I was watching the new Melissa Joan Hart Christmas movie on Lifetime last night,
Last night,
and they
yeah.
had what?
Yeah, last night I thought that was so funny.
It
The
was
movie.
so I am like I really, really if you ask me like what is one kind of Christmas movie you would really love to work on, I really want to work on something that has like a magical element,
Yeah, yeah.
a magical or travel. I just think that there's like so much fun and opportunity to be had. But anyway, there was a scene in that movie where they were wearing like a conjoined like Christmas sweater where it was like sewn. Did you see that part? It was like
Yeah.
in a montage, but it was like so. And I was like, that's almost a Christmas movie premise like in itself. Like there's two people stuck together with like a Christmas sweater that's sewn in the middle. Um,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
like, give me
no,
one of those.
I love those kind of movies, those stories. Like last year, there was one called Snowman's that was so fun. We loved it on Ion. And then, yeah, this year there's been two kind of magical ones. There's the Very Nutty Christmas, and then also there was one called Christmas Perfection that was the best about a girl who dreams of this perfect Christmas, and then she has this Irish village, and she wakes up after it all going to mess and being terrible. She wakes up inside her Irish village and having the perfect Christmas every day where she can eat as much as she wants. She can it's just it's perfect. But of course, like after having that a couple of days, it gets a little old. It was so funny. I loved it. So yeah, definitely more magic because we haven't gotten that much from Hallmark as far as magic, and we love
I
it.
know. The thing is too is like the beauty of a Christmas movie is you don't even really have to explain the magic. Like,
Yes.
it's not like a situation. It's not like a big like Zoltar situation where like you have to give like this convoluted reason why. Although I love that movie, I don't think it's convoluted, but you have to give this reason like why it's happening, right? but you
Yeah.
don't really, it's a Christmas movie. It's Christmas magic. Like, people are willing to sort of accept why something's happening.
Yeah.
Like, you have this chance to really open it up. Yeah, I mean, like, any one of those ones where, like, even if it's not straight up magic, if someone, like, those ones where, like, someone falls and, like, hits their head and then they're, like, in a
Yeah.
dream world, or anything like that, I think constitutes those types of movies.
Yeah.
And they're always so
Love
much
it.
fun. You
Yeah.
get to do all kinds of callbacks and stuff between the real world and, like, the fantasy world, and, like, just a lot more sort of comedy, because everything's heightened already with,
Yeah.
like, the magic element, that you
Yeah.
can be a little, like, lean a little bit more into, like, comedic stuff. Yeah, for sure. That's I'm on the hunt. Like,
Yay.
yeah,
That's what we'd
hopefully,
like to hear.
yeah, hopefully next year I'll be chatting with you, and we'll be talking about, like, my very magical Christmas star,
Yes.
extravaganza.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so good. Oh, good. Well, we're excited. You are amazing. I can't even believe how much you have accomplished, and I'm just excited to see what's coming up for 2019. It's gonna be fun. I'm sure you have a lot of
Uh,
irons in the fire.
well, I'm working on a Christmas movie now.
Uh-huh.
I can't divulge much more, but I will
Sure.
say it is Christmas. So I definitely will have at least one. Hopefully. Oh my gosh. Like, wait, maybe. Let's not jinx
Uh-huh.
anything. I'm
Yeah.
in the Christmas game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to, like, the cool thing about Hallmark, which I think a lot of people appreciate, is that they essentially break their year into, like, these sort of seasonal events. So there's, like, all kinds of different, like, worlds you can play in, right? So I'd love to do, some other, a wedding movie, or a
Yeah.
fall harvest or something like that. I think that would be a lot of fun too. But for sure, Christmas is, like, there's really no downside to writing a Christmas movie. It's just, like, you get to revel in, like,
Yeah.
all of the, like, most wonderful things about humanity, right? And have some fun and romance while you're doing it. So it's definitely a space I like being in. So yeah.
That's really, really cool. Well, do you have social media that you'd like to share, or ways people can follow you?
Yeah, so I'm not great with social media. I do have a Twitter. It's at Holland Notes, HOLLANDNOTES. I do respond if people tweet at me, like, or message me. I try to be, like, really available. I just don't, like, actively tweet
Right.
in general. But the good thing about Twitter, when someone tweets at you, is you get, like, an alert in your email, and then you could just jump over and say, like, oh. So, like, if you're watching a movie that I've done, or have a question or anything, like, I try to get back to everybody. So, even if I'm not specifically on, or you can't see me tweeting or anything like that. And that's really the only one. I mean, I've I think that's it.
Great.
You can reach me on Twitter. And then, I'd love
Great.
to hear from people.
Yeah. Well, I'll have
Yeah.
that in the description section. People can follow you. And thanks so much for coming and talking with us. This was really fun. I really enjoyed getting to hear about your experiences and your writing. And just thanks so much for all your hard work, and to entertain us, and to provide these stories that we enjoy. So really appreciate it.
Well, again, thanks for having me, and I hope we can do it again, and we'll be
Yes.
chatting about entertaining Christmas, or something down the pipeline. Who knows? But
Yes.
or you can have me on to talk about something that is not mine, because I do love talking about random movies.
Oh yeah.
So, but thanks for having me. I hope everyone has a really great holiday. And
We
enjoy some eggnog.
definitely, yeah, we definitely will, for sure. And so yeah, Merry Christmas, and we'll definitely talk again soon.
All right, thanks.
Okay, bye. Really like to thank Marcy. That was so much fun. I loved talking with her, and look forward to entertaining Christmas that's coming up this week, and her other projects. So let us know what you thought of Very Very Valentine, some of these other projects we talked about, and thanks again, and make sure you're following us on Hallmarkies Pod, all of our social media. And if you can put in your reviews on iTunes, we really appreciate it. It really helps us out. And give us a thumbs up if you're listening on YouTube. And thanks again. You can follow me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube. So check that out. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye. Merry Christmas.